Lei Jun, the second strongest among the younger generation of the Chuyun sect. A few days ago, when Lei Jun encountered Peng Bao again, they were together and formed a small group specifically to search for and snatch Profound Fragment. Chium. First time Duanling Tian saw Lei Jun. He noticed the greedy look in Lei Jun's eyes when Lei Jun looked at him. It was a greedy look that wished he could kill him and claim his spatial ring for himself. However, he didn't care. In his opinion, Lei Jun posed no threat to him. Later, seeing Peng Bao siding with him, Lei Jun, in a fit of anger, directly turned against Peng Bao and then left on his own. Still haunting, aren't you? Duanling Tian narrowed his eyes slightly, gazing calmly at Lei Jun, who was standing in the distance, seemingly having waited for him for a long time. He moved his lips slightly and murmured softly, Duanling Tian, if you know what's good for you, hand over the 8-fold Emperor Stage Thunder Profound Fragment that Peng Bao exchanged with you. If you do that, I might just leave you a complete corpse. Upon seeing Duanling Tian appear, Lei Jun's eyes lit up. He flew out, quickly approached Duanling Tian and confronted him, his words filled with a condescending tone, his arrogant gaze towards Duanling. Tian didn't seem to be looking at a living person, but rather at a dead one. Perhaps in his eyes, there was no way Duanling Tian could escape his grasp. Hand over the profound fragment and leave me a complete corpse? Hearing Lei Jun's words, Duanling Tian smiled, a bright and radiant smile. Lei Jun, by saying that, am I supposed to thank you for your mercy? Of course. Lei Jun didn't seem to catch the sarcasm in Duanling Tian's words, and said proudly, Most people killed by me are either torn into several pieces of their body or exploded into a shower of flesh. To leave you a complete corpse, you naturally should thank me for my mercy. Towards the end, a maniacal smile appeared on Lei Jun's face, his eyes glinting with a cold light, filled with a formidable killing intent, as if he wanted to devour someone. Idiot! Duanling Tian did not show the terrified expression Lei Jun expected. Instead, he gave Lei Jun a look as if he were an idiot and slowly uttered 2 words. Idiot? Lei Jun was stunned, completely stunned. This Duanling Tian, a mere disciple of a third-rate force, dared to call him an idiot? You're asking for death. Lei Jun, who had recovered his senses, suddenly roared, his anger reaching its peak. At the same time, his true energy surged and swirled around him, then transformed into streaks of purple lightning, like thick purple electric snakes coiling and spreading around his body. Whoosh! Almost at the same time as Lei Jun's true energy transformed into purple lightning above the void above his head, the power of heaven and earth began to stir, then forming a heaven and earth phenomenon. A total of 800 ancient horned dragon phantoms circled in the void above Lei Jun's head, lifelike and poised, as if they could pounce on Duanling Tian at any moment, baring their fangs and claws. 3rd level of the void. Prying stage. 3rd level high-grade thunder. Profound. Concept! Is this all your strength? Facing Lei Jun's power, which was a fusion of true energy and thunder profound concept, filled with streaks of purple lightning, Duanling Tian asked calmly and unhurriedly, with a nonchalant expression. Duanling Tian's tone even contained a hint of sarcasm. Duanling Tian, since you're in such a hurry to die, I'll grant your wish. Lei Jun was already enraged by Duanling Tian, and only when his full power surged through his body did his agitated emotions calm down a little. Now, hearing Duanling Tian's words, his agitated emotions, which had just settled, could no longer be suppressed and completely erupted. Bang! Lei Jun stomped his feet on the ground, causing a series of hideous cracks to appear and spread out densely, forming a huge spider web. Immediately after, he launched himself forward, like a swift bolt of lightning, charging directly towards Duanling Tian with fierce momentum. Boom! 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 Wherever Lei Jun passed, the sound of thunder and explosions intertwined, deafening. At the same time, invisible waves of air spread out, stirring up gusts of wind that swept in all directions, causing dust to fly in the nearby caves. Boom! Lei Jun arrived in front of Duanling Tian in an instant. Without using any spirit weapon, he threw a bare-handed punch, like a cannonball fired from a barrel, smashing towards Duanling Tian, intending to kill him. A punch containing the power of 800 ancient horned dragons, it smashed towards Duanling Tian's chest with destructive force. If it connected, Duanling Tian would either die or be crippled. At the same time, Lei Jun looked at Duanling Tian, who remained motionless, and couldn't help but let out a sneer, in his opinion. The reason Duanling Tian didn't react was because his speed was too fast. Facing his attack, this young disciple of a mere third-rate force simply didn't have time to react. A disciple of a third-rate force is just a disciple of a third-rate force. In front of me, they are like ants. Just as Lei Jun felt disdain and thought that the punch he threw would immediately end Duanling Tian's life, he was horrified to discover that his fist encountered an extremely terrifying resistance when it was just an inch away from Duanling Tian. Crack! A soft sound was heard. It was Duanling Tian, who, just as the rampant power on Lei Jun's fist was about to land on him, struck like lightning and easily caught Lei Jun's fiercely incoming fist. Lei Jun's punch, which contained the power of 800 ancient horned dragons and struck down like a falling meteor, landed in Duanling Tian's hand as if it had hit a ball of cotton, completely devoid of any attack power. When his fiercely thrown and powerful punch was easily caught bare-handed by Duanling Tian, Lei Jun's expression had already changed. Now, even if he were dumber, he would clearly realize. The power possessed by the purple-clothed youth in front of him was far beyond what he could match. Just as Lei Jun was about to pull his fist away from Duanling Tian's vice-like hand and prepare to turn and flee, his pupils suddenly constricted. At this moment, he was horrified to see. Above the void above the purple-clothed youth's head, at some unknown time, a heaven and earth phenomenon had appeared, condensing a total of 1,100 ancient horned dragon phantoms, winding down, giving him immense shock. Without a spirit weapon, the power of 1,100 ancient horned dragons, that was a full 300 ancient horned dragons, more than the power in his fist. After seeing the 1,100 ancient horned dragon phantoms in front of him, Lei Jun completely lost his temper. Not good. Soon, realizing that Duanling Tian's power might very well cost him his life, Lei Jun's face completely changed, becoming extremely ugly and filled with a hint of despair. At the same time, he instinctively tried to pull his fist back from Duanling Tian's hand. However, his fist was held in Duanling Tian's hand as if it had taken root there, making it impossible for him to pull it out. The next moment, the sharp pain from his fist and a vast power that slammed into Lei Jun's body, instantly spreading throughout his entire being, made him let out a desperate shriek. The scream was heart-wrenching, making anyone who heard it feel a tingling sensation on their scalp. Just as Duanling Tian grabbed Lei Jun's fist, the power of 4 fused profound concepts in his hand suddenly vibrated, easily shattering the purple lightning coiling around Lei Jun's fist. That was the power formed by the fusion of Lei Jun's true energy and thunder profound concept. After shattering the power coiling around Lei Jun's fist, the power coiling in Duanling Tian's hand swept out with destructive force, pressing down on Lei Jun's body. Wah! Lei Jun's body trembled violently, his face turned pale, and he involuntarily spat out a mouthful of clotted blood. No! Lei Jun, who had just caught his breath upon seeing Duanling Tian's next move, immediately realized what Duanling Tian intended to do. His face changed drastically, and he hastily cried out in alarm. Unfortunately, Duanling Tian seemed to not hear Lei Jun's cry at all, ignoring it. At the same time, Duanling Tian tightened his grip on Lei Jun's fist, lifted Lei Jun's entire body, and with a pair of sharp, cold eyes, stared at the cave wall not far away. Whoosh, 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 swoosh! Duanling Tian grabbed Lei Jun's fist, swung Lei Jun's entire body around a few times like a pinwheel, and then let go, sending him hurtling like an arrow from a bow towards the cave wall not far away. Boom! A loud bang echoed. Stone chips flew from the cave wall, and Lei Jun's entire body was smashed into the cave wall, turning into a puddle of flesh and blood splattered on the cave wall, a horrifying sight. The scene before him was very much like an extremely abstract painting from Duanling Tian's previous life on Earth. Lei Jun was completely silent, dead beyond dead. Although, before Duanling Tian swung Lei Jun's entire body and threw him out, Lei Jun had repeatedly mobilized his power, trying to break free from his control. However, Lei Jun's power, each time it appeared, was mercilessly crushed by his own power. Therefore, when Lei Jun was swung and thrown out by him, he had no power whatsoever to defend himself. How could a mere flesh and blood body withstand his power? And how could it clash head-on with a cave wall as hard as iron? Because of this, Lei Jun was, without any surprise, swung and thrown out by Duanling Tian and smashed to death. From beginning to end, Lei Jun didn't even have time to take out his first-grade spirit weapon gauntlets from his spatial ring. Of course, even if he had used a spirit weapon, he would have met the same end. Simply because, if he didn't use a spirit weapon, Duanling Tian didn't either. The single word greed has, however, killed countless people. Putting away Lei Jun's spatial ring, Duanling Tian shook his head and sighed with an old-fashioned air, without looking back, as he continued walking towards the cave entrance he had come from. Both the current Lei Jun and the previous Ling Ji were driven by greed, coveting the profound fragments in his hands, and thus met such an end. Soon, Duanling Tian returned to the spacious cave, waiting for news from Peng Bao and the three of Huang Da Niu. Before long, 3 figures emerged from the cave entrance in the middle of the left side of the cave, appearing before Duanling Tian. They were precisely Huang Da Niu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong. How was it? Seeing the 3, Duanling Tian's eyes lit up, and he asked with anticipation. The 3 shook their heads. That side is a maze with no way out. We searched every corner inside and didn't find a second exit. Huang Da Niu said with a bitter smile. Evidently their experience was the same as Duanling Tian's. It seems we can only wait for Peng Bao. Hearing Huang Da Niu's words, Duanling Tian nodded with some disappointment. If the path Peng Bao took also doesn't lead to the central area, then we can only split up and investigate the remaining 3 cave entrances. At this point, Duanling Tian looked at the 3 unexplored cave entrances on either side of the cave. So far, they had no idea what was inside those 3 entrances. An hour passed quickly. Why hasn't Peng Bao returned yet? Huang Da Niu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong couldn't help but frown. He's coming! Duanling Tian's gaze sharpened, fixed on the innermost cave entrance on the right side of the cave. With his keen hearing, he could clearly hear the swift whooshing sound coming from within. The whooshing sound grew closer. Whoosh! Soon, a cloud of dust was stirred up outside the cave entrance. Immediately after, a familiar figure swept out from inside the cave entrance, appearing before Duanling Tian and the other 3. It was precisely Peng Bao. That's the way to the central area. After Peng Bao appeared, he immediately smiled and said to Duanling Tian and the others. Duanling Tian and the other 3's eyes instantly lit up at his words. At once, the 5 set off again, entering through the innermost cave entrance on the right side of the cave, continuing their journey towards the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. As time passed, they drew closer and closer to the central area. At the same time, in various directions of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, many others were also approaching the location of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure's central area. 2 days later. Are we there? Looking at the empty cave entrance in the distance, Duanling Tian's swiftly moving figure slowed down. At the same time, he successfully arrived at the location of the cave entrance. Standing at the entrance, what appeared before Duanling Tian was no longer the cave he had seen countless times. The cave before him was incredibly vast and spacious, revealing a new world from bottom to top. The cave entrance where he stood was merely a small hole high up on one side of the wall of the enormous cave outside. There were countless similar small holes on the surrounding walls of this gigantic cave. However, Duanling Tian had no time to concern himself with these now. His gaze immediately fell on the central area of this gigantic cave. There, a palace, stood a colossal palace. The colossal palace, resplendent and magnificent in appearance, stood there like a giant beast slumbering, exuding a daunting aura from head to toe. This palace, is it the palace mentioned in the Martial Emperor's message? The place where he died of old age back then? Unbeknownst to him, Peng Bao had also caught up, standing beside Duanling Tian, observing the colossal palace standing within the enormous cave with surprise. Is that Martial Emperor's remains inside this palace? Huang Danyu also followed, looking at the palace before him, his eyes shining and his breathing involuntarily quickened slightly. According to the Martial Emperor's message, his remains contained a total of 3 profundity fragments, one of which was an Emperor-grade profundity fragment, and the other 2 were royal-grade profundity fragments, not to mention the 2 royal-grade profundity fragments. Just that Emperor-grade profundity fragment alone was enough to drive everyone mad. Although Su Li and Zhang Shouyong did not speak, the fervent gaze in their eyes as they looked at the palace ahead undoubtedly revealed their inner thoughts. The palace standing within the enormous cave, like a behemoth, involuntarily exuded the waves of ancient and vicissitudes of life aura. It seemed to be telling those who came here about the long history of its existence. There are people over there. Su Li was sharp-eyed and quickly noticed that on the other side of the colossal palace, 3 figures were sparsely standing in the air. These 3 people had clearly arrived here before them, since the palace mentioned in the Martial Emperor's message had appeared. Then this was undoubtedly their destination for this trip, the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Senior Brother Zuo. Almost as soon as Su Li's voice faded, Ping Bao's low cry reached the ears of Duanling Tian and the other 3. They followed Ping Bao's gaze, which was fixed on the distance, and immediately saw a green figure standing in the air, far away. A young man dressed in green. Originally the green-clad youth stood there, quietly closing his eyes to rest. But when Duanling Tian and the others' gazes converged, he seemed to sense something and opened his eyes. His gaze, like a knife or a sword, immediately focused on the direction where Duanling Tian and the others were. "Let's go! I'll introduce Senior Brother Zuo to you all." At the same time, Duanling Tian and the other 4 were called by Peng Bao to fly out, and in a moment they were near the green-clad young man, Senior Brother Zuo. When greeting the green-clad youth, Peng Bao's tone subtly revealed a hint of awe, an awe that came from the depths of his heart. "Junior Brother Peng." The green-clad youth nodded to Peng Bao. As for Duanling Tian and the other 4, he didn't pay them much attention. While not disdainful of them, he subtly revealed his aloofness. Duanling Tian and the others were not, surprised by this. It seems this person is the Zuo Yue that Peng Bao mentioned to us earlier. At this moment, Huang Danyu's Yuan Force condensed voice clearly entered the ears of Duanling Tian, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong, as he secretly communicated with them. It should be. Su Li and Zhang Shouyong both nodded. "Zuo Yue," Duanling Tian raised an eyebrow, as if Peng Bao's earlier words on the road echoed in his ears. "Among the contemporary young generation of our Wuchang sect, my strength can only rank 2nd. The strongest among the contemporary young generation of our Wuchang sect is my senior brother Zuo. His full name is Zuo Yue, and he is the only direct disciple of our Wuchang sect's Grand Elder. Our Wuchang sect's Grand Elder is the only Martial Emperor powerhouse in our Wuchang sect. Zuo Yue, the top talent of the contemporary young generation of the Wuchang sect. A direct disciple of a Martial Emperor powerhouse." Either of these titles alone was enough to shock people. Together, they made Zuo Yue the most dazzling, bright pearl of the Wuchang sect. Seeing that Zuo Yue had not looked at Duanling Tian and the other 3 directly from beginning to end, Peng Bao couldn't help but feel a little awkward and offered an apologetic smile to Duanling Tian and the others. Duanling Tian and the other 3 returned a smile, indicating that they didn't mind. If the other party was truly Zuo Yue, he was fully qualified to be so arrogant. "Senior Brother Zuo, these are my friends. This is Duanling Tian, this is Huang Danyu, this is Su Li, and this is Zhang Shouyong." Peng Bao introduced Duanling Tian and the other 4 to Zuo Yue, and when he mentioned Duanling Tian, Zuo Yue, who had been standing there aloofly, immediately looked at Duanling Tian, not hearing a single word of what Peng Bao said afterwards. "You are Duanling Tian?" Zuo Yue stared at Duanling Tian. As arrogant as he was, a hint of greed couldn't help but appear in the depths of his eyes. That disciple of the third-rate Force 5-element sect? That's right. I am that Duanling Tian. Seeing the greed, In Zuo Yue's eyes, Duan Lingtian could almost instantly conclude. This Zuo Yue must have heard the news about him obtaining the profundity fragment. Sensing the tension between Duan Lingtian and Zuo Yue, Peng Bao's expression changed. Although Huang Danyu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong knew that even if they teamed up, they were no match for Zuo Yue, they still firmly stood behind Duan Ling. Tian, looking at Zuo Yue with ill intent. A glint flashed in Zuo Yue's eyes. Suddenly, as if he thought of something, he turned his head to look at the two young men standing separately in the distance. When he noticed that their gazes occasionally fell on his side, he ultimately did not act out, nor did he attack Duan Lingtian. He knew in his heart that once those two knew Duan Lingtian's identity, even with his strength, it would be very difficult to obtain the profundity fragment in Duan Lingtian's possession. Zuo Yue's subtle movements fell completely into Duan Lingtian's eyes, causing Duan Lingtian to also look at the two young men in the distance. Of the two young men, one was tall and robust, his build similar to Huang Danyu's. The other, dressed in a green robe and carrying a sheathed spirit sword on his back, was a swordsman. Out of curiosity, Duan Lingtian extended his spiritual power and swept it towards the two. Soon, Duan Lingtian's pupils contracted, and a hint of shock appeared on his face, followed by a sudden realization. So that's it. It seems they are the top talents of the contemporary young generation of the Chuyun sect and the Beiming sect, respectively. After investigating their cultivation, Duan Lingtian could confirm this point. Their cultivation was no less than Zuo Yue's. And the concern that flashed in the depths of Zuo Yue's eyes after he glanced at the two was also seen by Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian could easily guess Zuo Yue's thoughts. "Brother Duan!" Just then, a beautiful and familiar voice, like a nightingale, clearly entered Duan Lingtian's ears. Immediately, Duan Lingtian focused his gaze on where the voice came from. There, a figure like a fire spirit was swiftly flying out, heading directly towards him. Tianwu. Seeing the person, a gentle smile couldn't help but appear on Duan Lingtian's face. He flew out to meet her. The figure like a fire spirit was none other than Feng Tianwu. All along the way, Duan Lingtian had been constantly worried about Feng Tianwu's safety. Now that he saw Feng Tianwu was fine, the huge stone suspended in his heart dropped, and he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Brother Duan, looking at the purple-clad young man who had captivated her heart, Feng Tianwu's pretty face involuntarily flushed, as if it could drip blood. At this moment, Feng Tianwu's stunningly beautiful face, capable of captivating all beings, revealed a hint of shyness, making her appear delicate and evoking an urge to hold her close and cherish her. "Tianwu!" Duan Lingtian smiled and met the gaze of the red-clad woman before him, his eyes filled with deep tenderness. Now, when facing Feng, Tianwu, even he couldn't quite describe his feelings. The previous unfamiliarity was gone, replaced by a sense of closeness. However, it still seemed to lack the feeling of being lovers. But every time he recalled how he and Zishang had fallen into the bottomless abyss beside the high platform, when they first entered the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, and how Feng Tianwu had jumped down after them without hesitation, his heart couldn't help but stir. His heart was not made of stone, so he could deeply feel Feng Tianwu's devotion to him, which surpassed even her own life. It had to be said. After that incident, Feng Tianwu's position in his heart had undergone a drastic change compared to before, as if only the final barrier needed to be broken for their hearts to completely intertwine. Huh? As Duan Lingtian's spiritual energy involuntarily extended and landed on Feng Tianwu, he seemed to discover something and couldn't help but be startled. Feng Tianwu's cultivation had already broken through to the void-prying stage 4th level. Compared to her previous void-prying stage 3rd level, while there was an improvement, it wasn't enough to cause him such a surprise. What truly startled him were the waves of scorching aura emanating from Feng Tianwu. These scorching auras were hidden within her body, ready to burst forth, as if they wanted to ignite his spiritual energy. "What's going on?" In an instant, Duan Lingtian, who had withdrawn his spiritual energy, looked utterly serious. The feeling his spiritual energy brought back to him was as if a terrifying fire beast was dormant, within Feng Tianwu's body. That fire beast, once it awakened, Feng Tianwu would almost certainly die. Duan Lingtian had no doubt about this. Could it be the power of the fire spirit body? Soon, Duan Lingtian vaguely guessed the reason, and it could only be this reason. It's just that Tianwu is only nearly 26 years old this year. It seems there are still 4 years until the true eruption of the fire spirit body's power. Duan Lingtian was quite puzzled by this point. It seems that in this Martial Emperor's secret treasure, Tianwu must have encountered some accident, which caused the power of her fire spirit body to become increasingly unstable. Thinking of this, Duan Lingtian's expression grew even more serious. What a beautiful woman. Feng Tianwu's appearance successfully attracted the gazes of Peng Bao, Zuo Yue, and the 2 other young men standing not far away. At this moment, all 4 of them looked at Feng Tianwu with a hint of admiration. They had seen many beautiful women, but they had never seen one with such an aura, and they couldn't help but feel their hearts stir. Brother Lingtian is truly blessed. While marveling at Feng Tianwu's absolutely stunning beauty, which could bring down kingdoms, Peng Bao also noticed Feng Tianwu's gaze towards Duan Lingtian. It was a gaze of adoration. Seeing this, he couldn't help but look envious, and, at the same time, he felt happy for Duan Lingtian. Although he had not known Duan Lingtian for long, their similar temperaments had already made them true friends. Humph. Zuo Yue couldn't help but let out a cold snort, his cold gaze towards Duan Lingtian now tinged with jealousy. After learning Duan Lingtian's identity, his first thought was undoubtedly to kill Duan Lingtian and then seize the profundity fragment in Duan Lingtian's hand. However, the presence of the other 2 individuals who were as famous as him in the northern desert land prevented him from acting immediately. He knew that once he made a move against Duan Lingtian, it would definitely attract the attention of the other 2. At that time, the other 2 would certainly join the competition. In that case, he might end up with nothing in the end. Just as Duan Lingtian was about to ask Feng Tianwu if her fire spirit body had encountered any accidents in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Duan Lingtian, you really are alive. A resonant voice came from afar, breaking the tranquility of the scene. Whoosh! Immediately after, under everyone's gaze, a bald young man in a kasaya flew out from a cave entrance on the side wall of the giant cave. His speed was extremely fast, and in a flash, he was already suspended in the air not far from Duan Lingtian. Xuan Bei! Looking at the young monk who appeared before him, Duan Lingtian raised an eyebrow and smiled faintly. We haven't fulfilled our agreement yet, so of course I'll live well. Xuanbei, the strongest among the younger generation of Yunkong Temple, was the young monk who had challenged Duan Lingtian to a duel at Kangwol Fort in the past. How about we fulfill our agreement now? Xuanbei narrowed his eyes slightly, a smile always on his face, and said unhurriedly, I'm very interested in the profundity fragment in your hand. Profundity fragment. Xuanbei's words made Zuo Yue, whose expression had already changed upon hearing Xuanbei call Duan Lingtian's name, turn even more grim. Just now, when Xuanbei called out Duan Lingtian's name, he noticed that the 2 guys from Chuyun sect and Beiming sect, who were as famous as him, had their gazes fixed on Duan Lingtian, but they seemed to not have reacted for a while. Now, Xuanbei brazenly spoke of the profundity fragment, and he clearly saw the look of sudden realization on the faces of those 2 guys, as well as their suddenly brightened eyes. Not good. Zuo Yue's heart sank. What he least wanted to happen had still happened. Whoosh! Whoosh! Almost the instant Xuanbei's voice fell, the 2 young men standing in the distance finally made their move. Their robes fluttered, and the next moment they vanished into thin air, reappearing near Duan Lingtian, glaring at him menacingly. At this moment, their gazes towards Duan Lingtian shimmered with extreme brilliance, not at all like they were observing a person, but rather like they were observing a peerless treasure. You are Duan Lingtian? That disciple of a third-rate force who obtained the profundity fragment. The 2 of them stared at Duan Lingtian, speaking almost simultaneously, questioning him. Feng Tianwu was originally quietly gazing at her beloved, feeling how happy she was at that moment, when 2 sudden voices, like the cawing of crows, broke. the brief tranquility causing her pretty face to change color. Just as Feng Tianwu was about to erupt, a soft voice condensed from vital energy entered her ear, calming her agitated emotions. Tianwu, did you encounter anything in this martial Emperor's secret treasure? Why do I feel that the power of your fire spirit body within you is no longer as peaceful as before? A gentle voice, filled with concern, completely suppressed Feng Tianwu's agitated emotions, making the blush on her pretty face deepen, even more, as if it could drip blood. Being cared for was inherently a good feeling, even more so when it was by her beloved. Feng Tianwu nodded, then replied to Duanling Tian with vital energy condensed into sound. Not long ago, I obtained a 9th-level Imperial Fire Profundity fragment. As Feng Tianwu spoke, Duanling Tian's pupils couldn't help but contract. He had been curious earlier of the 5 Imperial Profundity fragments in the outer area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, besides the 3 he obtained. Who had obtained the other 2? Now he knew that one of them had actually been obtained by Tianwu. And it's a 9th-level Imperial Fire Profundity fragment. Duanling Tian was greatly surprised. One should know that even among the 3 Imperial Profundity fragments he obtained, the best was only an 8th-level Imperial Profundity fragment, far inferior to a 9th-level Imperial Profundity fragment. Just as I held it in my hand, it separated my palm and transformed into a liquid power that merged into my body. Feng Tianwu's voice continued, prompting Duanling Tian to suppress the shock in his heart, regain his composure, and listen carefully as Feng Tianwu recounted her detailed experiences in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. This was originally Feng Tianwu's biggest secret, but in front of Duanling Tian, Feng Tianwu revealed it without any reservations, without the slightest concealment. Duanling Tian's expression grew increasingly solemn as Feng Tianwu spoke. Tianwu, she can actually mobilize and unleash 1st-level Imperial Fire Profundity? In Duanling Tian's heart skipped a beat. If it were a normal martial artist, being able to mobilize and unleash 1st-level Imperial Fire Profundity might be a good thing, but this person was Feng Tianwu, the possessor of the fire spirit body. If it were just an ordinary martial artist, it would be impossible for the 9th-level Imperial Fire Profundity fragment to have such an unusual reaction. That profundity fragment must have reacted that way because Tianwu is a fire spirit body user. Duanling Tian could almost assert this point. I wonder if there are any records of experiences similar to Tianwu's in the reincarnation, Martial Emperor's memories. Duanling Tian, whose concern had muddled his thoughts, anxiously searched through the reincarnation Martial Emperor's memories from 2 lifetimes, intending to find an answer. He always felt that the changes in the profundity fragment within Tianwu's body, and her ability to mobilize 1st-level Imperial Fire Profundity, and were not good for her. Duanling Tian and Feng Tianwu communicated with vital energy condensed into sound, standing silently, completely ignoring the questions from the 2 individuals from Chuyun sect and Beiming sect. For a moment, the burly young man from Chuyun sect and the green-clad young man from Beiming sect couldn't help but turn grim. Ha ha! Lei Zhong, Xu Qing, they're too lazy to bother with you guys. At this moment, Zuo Yue couldn't help but burst into laughter, looking at his 2 old rivals with a mocking expression. Lei Zhong, the top young talent of the current generation in Chuyun sect, the only direct disciple of Chuyun sect's martial. Emperor expert Xu Qing, the top young talent of the current generation in Beiming sect, the direct disciple of Beiming sect's sect leader. Upon hearing Zuo Yue's sarcastic words, Xu Qing remained calm, realizing that Zuo Yue was intentionally trying to sow discord. Therefore he quickly returned to his normal state, neither pleased nor angry. Swish! Unlike Xu Qing, Lei Zhong's expression changed drastically. Lei Zhong, who already had a bad temper, couldn't hold back after hearing Zuo Yue's taunts. He moved his body, and in an instant he seemed to transform into an eagle, soaring out, and pouncing towards Duanling Tian with immense speed and ferocity. Whoosh! As Lei Zhong flew out, a surging, milky-white flame rose from his body. The milky-white flame, as soon as it appeared, transformed into a sky-filling crimson flame, making his entire being resemble a monstrous beast with a gaping maw, intent on devouring Duanling Tian. Swoosh! Lei Zhong, enveloped in flames, was like a fire god descending to the world, striking out with a punch that resembled a scorching fireball, causing the air to compress and generating bursts of explosive sounds. As the explosive sounds rang out, scorching heat waves spread in all directions. Above Lei Zhong's head, the power of heaven and earth surged, forming a celestial phenomenon, first manifesting 600 ancient horned dragon phantoms, followed by another 500 ancient horned dragon phantoms. 4th level void transformation stage. 4th level high-grade fire concept. Between the 4th level void transformation stage and the 3rd level void transformation stage lay a chasm, a watershed that was difficult to cross. A 3rd level void transformation stage martial artist with their full origin energy. Unleashed, possessed power comparable to 400 ancient horned dragons. However, a 4th level void transformation stage martial artist with their full origin energy unleashed, possessed power comparable to 600 ancient horned dragons. It full 200 ancient horned dragons more than the former. Whoosh! 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 The air currents, compressed and sweeping outwards, stirred up gusts of scorching wind, making everyone present feel waves of heat washing over them. This feeling was very uncomfortable for them. Now Lei Zhong, he'd act Duanling Tian like lightning, not even using a spirit weapon. Perhaps, in his opinion, a mere young disciple from a third-rate force was not worthy of him using a spirit weapon. As for Duanling Tian obtaining concept fragments, in his view, it was purely due to Duanling Tian's good luck. Swoosh! With 1,100 ancient horned dragon phantoms above his head, Lei Zhong's fist, like a cannonball enveloped in flames, swept out, heading straight for Duanling Tian as if to blast him apart with a single punch. "Brother Duan, be careful." In a hurry, Feng Tianwu reacted, her face changing drastically, and she cried out in alarm. While warning Duanling Tian, her eyes turned bloodshot, and terrifying scorching aura emanated from her body, continuously escalating. As flames surged from Feng Tianwu's body, above her head, the power of heaven and earth stirred, on the verge of forming 1,000 or even 2,000 ancient horned dragon phantoms. "Don't worry, I can handle him." As flames rose from Feng Tianwu's body, a voice transmission, quick as lightning, entered her ears, completely reassuring her. She trusted the owner of that voice unconditionally. Immediately after, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Duan Ling Tian, who had appeared distracted and defenseless, instantly turned around and threw a punch, meeting Lei Zhong's menacing flame-enshrouded fist. Swoosh! As Duanling Tian struck out with his fist, his milky white origin energy surged, instantly transforming into vast, earthy yellow power, surrounded by deep purple lightning and solidified azure gales. Not only that, when he threw this punch, sword, he followed like a shadow, containing an extremely terrifying sword concept. Boom! 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 As Duanling Tian punched, the air was compressed again, generating bursts of thunderous explosive sounds. Not only that, the airwaves, filled with immense impact, spread in all directions, also stirring up gusts of biting. And wind, which continuously collided with the scorching winds, stirred up by Lei Zhong. Immediately after, bursts of explosive sounds rang out, one after another, ceaselessly. The robes of those present fluttered in the wind, rustling loudly. However, none of them paid attention to any of this. Their gazes were tightly fixed on the two figures about to collide, or more accurately, the fists about to collide. Swoosh! Flames surged and raged around Lei Zhong's body as he unleashed a punch, like the wrath of a fire god, tearing through the sky and raising an overwhelming wave of scorching aura that enveloped Duanling Tian. Swoosh! Duanling Tian's purple robe fluttered and swelled as he threw a punch, unleashing his full origin energy along with the 4 mixed concepts without reservation. Boom! The two men's fists collided in an instant, and the two forces clashed, producing a deafening roar. In the air, clearly visible airwaves spread out like ripples, extending in all directions. Huang Danyu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong, whose cultivation was weaker all changed their expressions. They only felt their blood surging throughout their bodies, vaguely affected. So strong. Seeing Duanling Tian throw a bare-handed punch and clash with Lei Zhong, not falling behind in the slightest, Wang Daniu and the other two's eyes lit up after calming their surging blood. Boom. Boom! 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 Centered on the collision point of Duanling Tian and Lei Zhong's fists, as the ripple-like airwaves swept out, even more vast gusts of wind surged forth. Crack! Crack! In an instant, the hairpins on Duanling Tian and Yi. Lei Zhong's heads broke almost simultaneously, and their long hair flew up with the wind, like tiny black snakes dancing. Boom! 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 At the collision point of Duanling Tian and Lei Zhong's fists, their forces continuously impacted and converged, continuing to produce deafening roars. Evenly matched! How is that possible? Seeing this scene, Zuo Yue's pupils constricted, and his face was filled with disbelief. He found it hard to believe that what he was seeing was real, that Duanling Tian, a mere young disciple from a third-rate force, who looked to be only around 25 years old, could actually fight. Lei Zhong to a draw, evenly matched? Is this Duanling Tian even stronger than Lei Zhong? Zhu Qing, who had originally been calm, couldn't help but be moved now, muttering to himself. In their exchange, Lei Zhong had the upper hand and initiated the attack. Yet, even so, Duanling Tian, who punched in a hurry, still managed to withstand Lei Zhong's punch. The power contained in Duanling Tian's punch is definitely stronger than Lei Zhong's. If it were only comparable to Lei Zhong's, he wouldn't have been able to hold his ground against Lei Zhong when exerting force in a hurry. Compared to Zuo Yue, Zhu Qing saw the scene before him more clearly. Duanling Tian had the upper hand, see. If to corroborate Zhu Qing's murmur, at the same time, above Duanling Tian's head, the rolling power of heaven and earth finally condensed into a celestial phenomenon. 1,200 ancient horned dragon phantoms materialized, winding downwards with an imposing momentum. Such a celestial phenomenon, undoubtedly declared. The bare-handed punch Duanling Tian just threw contained the power of 1,200 ancient horned dragons. This was a full 100 ancient horned dragons, more than the 1,100 ancient horned dragons of power. Contained in Lei Zhong's punch, the power of 1,200 ancient horned dragons. Duanling Tian's third-level void transformation stage cultivation was comparable to the power of 400 ancient horned dragons. His third-level high-grade wind concept was comparable to the power of 400 ancient horned dragons. His ninth-level mid-grade earth concept and sword concept, combined, were comparable to the power of 200 ancient horned dragons. Adding the first-level high-grade thunder concept, which was comparable to the power of 200 ancient horned dragons, it totaled exactly 1,200 ancient horned dragons of power. That's right. Duanling Tian's thunder concept had broken through. On the same day he dealt with Lei Zhong, he successfully made a breakthrough, advancing from 9th-level mid-grade to 1st-level high-grade in one go. Boom! Another loud bang came, and as the celestial phenomenon above Duanling Tian's head solidified, the purple lightning in his fist's power became even deeper and more rampant. At the same time, Duanling Tian recovered from the disadvantage of his hasty attack and loss of initiative, unleashing his full power, carrying the force of 1,200 ancient horned dragons, sweeping out. With 1,200 ancient horned dragons of power, after turning the tide, facing Lei Zhong's 1,100 ancient horned dragons of power, the outcome was obvious. Crushing. A complete and utter crushing. Impossible, as Ziqin. Lei Zhong was sent flying by Duanling Tian's punch, and an excruciating pain shot through his punching hand. He didn't scream. His pupils contracted, unable to believe that what he was seeing was real. A mere disciple from a third-rate force could actually overpower him when he had initiated the attack and held the upper hand. No matter whether Lei Zhong was willing to believe it or not, the fact that his power was inferior to Duanling Tian's, and that he was sent flying and even seriously injured, was undeniable. Wah! Lei Zhong, sent flying by Duanling Tian's punch, barely managed to stop himself after flying over 100 meters, and at the same time he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of dazzling dark blood. I'm injured? injured by a young disciple from a third-rate force. He reached up to wipe the corner of his mouth, and looking at the dark blood on his hand, Lei Zhong's pupils constricted, and his expression became somewhat dazed. But soon, he seemed to sense something, and with a jolt, he suddenly snapped back to reality. This was because he discovered that Duanling Tian, the disciple of the Five-Element sect, a third-rate force, seemed to have no intention of stopping after sending him flying with a single punch. Duanling Tian's gaze was cold, his face covered in frost, and he stepped through the air at a steady pace, moving towards Lei Zhong. Between his eyes, a chilling killing intent flickered. In his opinion, killing this strongest young expert of the contemporary cloud-chasing sect was not only about making the other party pay for his impulsiveness, but most importantly, he wanted to establish his authority. Currently, more people had gradually gathered in this huge cave. Among them were disciples from the unpredictable sect, the northern underworld sect, and the cloud-chasing sect. Bang! Bang, 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 bang. At this moment, the scene was eerily quiet, so much so that every step Duanling Tian took caused the air to tremble slightly, emitting a soft sound. Every soft sound, falling into Lei Zhong's ears, was like a clap of thunder, making Lei Zhong's face grow even uglier. Bang, bang! Each step Duanling Tian took was like a giant hammer striking Lei Zhong's chest, making his breathing more and more rapid, and it was a long time before he could calm down. Noticing the killing intent in Duanling Tian's eyes, Lei Zhong's face turned ugly, and he hastily took out a healing pill and consumed it. However, with his current injuries, even if he took a healing pill, it would be difficult for him to fully recover in a short time, affecting the full display of his power. Whoosh! At some point, a thick, broad saber appeared in Lei Zhong's uninjured left hand. As the flames in his hand surged and then merged into the saber's light blossomed. Whoosh! Above the sky, the power of heaven and earth once again condensed into 1,100 ancient horned dragon phantoms, followed by another 520 ancient horned dragon phantoms. 1,620 ancient horned dragon phantoms hovered above Lei Zhong's head, poised to strike. However, perhaps due to his injuries not yet recovering, the 1,620 ancient horned dragon phantoms above Lei Zhong's head were extremely unstable. In a moment, they dropped to over 1,500. Immediately after, they dropped again to 1,400, and then they never exceeded 1,500 again. At this moment, Duanling Tian, who had been advancing step by step, also had a sword in his hand, a quasi-emperor grade spirit sword. As soon as the quasi-emperor grade spirit sword appeared and Duanling Tian's power surged into it, an additional 400 ancient horned dragon phantoms appeared beside the 1,200 ancient horned dragon phantoms above Duanling Tian's head. 1,600 ancient horned dragon phantoms. Such a celestial phenomenon would normally be shocking, but many people present couldn't help but be stunned. These people were precisely Zuo Yue, Shu Qing, and Peng Bao, as well as other young disciples from second-rate forces. This Duanling Tian, using a spirit weapon, only has the power of 1,600 ancient horned dragons, weaker than Lei Zhong in his prime, even with a spirit weapon, by more than 20 ancient horned dragons. But when he doesn't use a spirit weapon, his power is stronger than Lei Zhong's, by 100 ancient horned dragons. What's going on? Could it be that he's holding back? It can only be that way. Otherwise, wouldn't Lei Zhong have lost unfairly today? Because he was severely injured by Duanling Tian, Lei Zhong can't unleash his full power now. Even with a spirit weapon, his power can't exceed 150 ancient horned dragons. Those who were discussing were the disciples of Wuchang sect and Beiming sect, who had survived and arrived at the central area of the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, totaling no more than 5 people. Their words carried a hint of schadenfreude. In their opinion, as long as Duanling Tian dared to kill Lei Zhong would surely die today. The faces of the 2 surviving Cloud Sect disciples were extremely grim. Lei Zhong was the top figure among the younger generation, if their Cloud Sect, their invincible god of war in their eyes. But today, their invincible god of war was at a disadvantage, in front of a disciple from a third-rate force, and was even in mortal danger. Now, almost all the second-rate force disciples who had arrived here already knew Duanling Tian's identity. The name Duanling Tian had already been heard before they arrived here, the top figure of the younger generation of the third-rate force Five Elements sect, who had obtained an Om fragment in the outer perimeter of the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure. I even thought of meeting this Duanling Tian before, then killing him and taking the Om fragment from his hand. Now it seems it's a good thing I didn't meet him, otherwise I would surely be the one to die. One of the Cloud Sect disciples said with a bitter smile. That's natural. Even senior brother Lei Zhong was severely injured by him. How could his strength be comparable to ours? With such strength, it's no wonder he could obtain the Om fragment. The other Cloud Sect disciple fully agreed. Immediately after, he added, However, as long as he's not crazy, he shouldn't dare to truly kill senior brother Lei Zhong. Otherwise, not only him, but even his third-rate force, the Five Elements sect, would have to bear the wrath of our Cloud Sect. Yes, unless he can kill all of us who witnessed him kill senior brother Lei Zhong. Otherwise, even if he kills senior brother Lei Zhong, he won't live, and he'll also implicate the sect he belongs to. The previous Cloud Sect disciple agreed profoundly. Now even most of the others felt that Duanling Tian wouldn't dare to kill Lei Zhong. After all, killing Lei Zhong was equivalent to completely offending the Cloud Sect. The Cloud Sect, one of the three strongest second-rate forces in the Northern Desert. They only needed to dispatch a Martial Emperor expert to effortlessly wipe out the third-rate force, Five Elements sect, from the Northern Desert. However, how could Duanling Tian's thoughts be guessed by them? When they saw Duanling Tian speed up, and in a moment charged towards Lei Zhong again, and in just 3 exchanges, he sent the thick saber in Lei Zhong's hand flying, severely injuring Lei Zhong once more. They were completely dumbfounded. This disciple from a third-rate force was actually this fierce. Seeing Duanling Tian raise his hand, a sword slowly swept out, about to pierce Lei Zhong's throat and kill him. He's crazy! This Duanling Tian is crazy. Doesn't he fear the Cloud Sect's retaliation? Now, besides the 2 young disciples of the Cloud Sect who were scared stiff, the disciples of the Wuchang Sect and Beiming Sect couldn't help but mutter to themselves, feeling a chill run down their spines. Was this purple-clad young man in front of them truly a disciple of a third-rate force? When did disciples of third-rate forces become so bold? Duanling Tian, just as Zuo Yue, Shu Qing, and Peng Bao were all startled by Duanling Tian's actions, Peng Bao anxiously shouted, intending to stop Duanling Tian from killing Lei Zhong. In his opinion, if Duanling Tian struck with that sword, not only would he himself surely die, but even his Five Elements sect would surely be annihilated. As a disciple of the Wuchang sect, he was very clear. The wrath of the Cloud Sect was not a joke. If a disciple of a third-rate force dared to kill him, the outcome would be the same. His Wuchang sect would spare no effort to eliminate that third-rate force disciple and then destroy that third-rate force. The dignity of a second-rate force could not be desecrated by a third-rate force. In the eyes of those from second-rate forces, people from third-rate forces, and even the Shay, third-rate forces they belonged to, were like ants, easily crushed. Hearing Peng Bao's voice, Duanling Tian's right hand trembled, moving the sword away, but his left hand was not idle. A palm strike landed, severely wounding the already injured Lei Zhong again. Wah! Lei Zhong spat out another mouthful of clotted blood, his face pale, devoid of color, his body swaying as if he could fall from the air at any moment. Whoosh! Duanling Tian's left hand shot out, grabbing Lei Zhong's throat, lifting him up whole. Now he only needed to exert force with his hand, and Lei Zhong would surely die. While gripping Lei Zhong's neck and lifting him, Duanling Tian looked at Peng Bao, a hint of confusion in his eyes. What is it? Duanling Tian, you can injure this Lei Zhong, but you absolutely must not impulsively kill him. If he doesn't die, everything is still fine. Once he dies, not only you, but even your Five Elements sect behind you will probably be annihilated. Peng Bao didn't waste words, directly stating his concerns. The reason he said these things was precisely because he regarded Duanling Tian as a friend and didn't want to see Duanling Tian embark on a path of no return. Five Elements. Sect? Hearing Peng Bao's words, Duan Lingtian frowned, then sighed. I almost forgot. The Five Elements sect would indeed find it difficult to cope with the wrath of the Cloud sect. Duan Lingtian's voice was not loud, but it reached the ears of everyone present. For a moment, including Feng Tianwu, almost everyone present thought that Duan Lingtian would no longer kill Lei Zhong. This Duan Lingtian, he still gave. That's natural. The Cloud sect's wrath is simply something he and the Five Elements sect cannot bear. The few young disciples of the Wuchang sect and Beiming sect whispered among themselves, not at all surprised by this outcome. As for the two young disciples of the Cloud sect, they both smiled triumphantly. The Cloud sect had such great deterrence, making them proud to be Cloud sect disciples. Cough. Duan Lingtian, you ultimately dare not kill me, too. Today, everything you've done to me. One day I will step onto the Five Elements sect and make you repay it 100 times over. Lei Zhong, who was being lifted by Duan Lingtian's choked throat and subjected to humiliation, had eyes filled with extreme coldness, staring at Duan Lingtian, struggling to speak through gritted teeth. However, Duan Lingtian seemed not to have heard him, as he continued to frown, as if deep in thought. Finally, Duan Lingtian came back to his senses. Today I, Duan Lingtian, hereby announce, from this moment on, I, Duan Lingtian, am leaving the Five Elements sect. From now on, the affairs of the Five Elements sect have nothing to do with me, and my affairs have nothing to do with the Five Elements sect. Duan Lingtian spoke. As soon as he spoke, he uttered words that left everyone utterly shocked. As Duan Lingtian's words fell, the entire scene fell into a dead silence. What did this Duan Lingtian want to do? This was the thought in most people's minds. Brother Duan, Feng Tianwu, was the first to react, realizing what Duan Lingtian was about to do next, her pretty face filled with solemnity. Brother Lingtian, don't be impulsive, even if you leave the Five Elements sect, the Cloud sect, for the sake of face. Won't attack the Five Elements sect. But you will have to bear the wrath of the Cloud sect and be hunted down by them. It's not worth offending the entire Cloud sect for one, Lei Zhong. Soon, Peng Bao also reacted, his face changing again, and he hastily tried to persuade him. Duan Lingtian! Brother Lingtian, Huang Danyu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong all looked at Duan Lingtian with worried expressions, fearing that Duan Lingtian would really kill Lei Zhong and bring trouble upon himself. Is your name Lei Zhong? Under everyone's gaze, Duan Lingtian looked at Lei Zhong and asked calmly. Yes, I am Lei Zhong, the only personal disciple of the Martial Emperor, expert of the Cloud sect. Lei Zhong said each word, his hoarse voice filled with pride, seemingly unaware of the approaching danger. Slap! Almost as soon as Lei Zhong's words fell, a crisp slap echoed, clearly reaching the ears of everyone present. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Duan Lingtian raised his hand and gave Lei Zhong a resounding slap, leaving a clear and visible handprint on half of Lei Zhong's face, making it swell. For a moment, the onlookers felt a tingling sensation on their scalps. This Duan Lingtian, he's too awesome, isn't he? Even after Lei Zhong declared himself a direct disciple of a Martial Emperor powerhouse, he still dared to slap him. It must be said that Duan Lingtian's courage filled them with admiration from the bottom of their hearts. However, admiration was one thing. It didn't mean they approved of Duan Lingtian's actions, seeking death. At the same time, many people felt that Duan Lingtian was courting death, including Zuo Yue, the strongest among the younger generation of the impermanent sect. At this moment, Zuo Yue looked at Duan Lingtian as if he were looking at a dead, and in his opinion, Duan Lingtian's action was undoubtedly a provocation to the dignity of that Martial Emperor powerhouse from the soaring Cloud sect. Even if Duan Lingtian could survive the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, he was certainly doomed. That Martial Emperor powerhouse would never let him go. I only asked if you were Lei Zhong. Did I ask whose direct disciple you were? After slapping Lei Zhong, Duan Lingtian faced Lei Zhong, who was glaring at him with eyes full of fury, wishing he could grind him to dust. Duan Lingtian remained calm and spoke unhurriedly. You... Lei Zhong's pupils constricted, then he tried to say something again. Slap! Another resounding slap landed on the other half of Lei Zhong's face, turning him into a pig's head. Did I tell you to speak? Duan Lingtian, who had slapped Lei Zhong again, continued to calmly look at him, making Lei Zhong so ashamed and enraged that he stared at Duan Lingtian with even greater hatred, yet he dared not utter another word. He believed that if he dared to say another word now, the other party would absolutely slap him again without hesitation. This purple-clad youth was simply a madman, a complete and utter madman. Seeing Duan Lingtian slap Lei Zhong again, the onlookers felt another tingling sensation on their scalps, only feeling that Duan Lingtian was too bold, not even putting a martial emperor powerhouse in his eyes. "Do you think I don't dare to kill you?" Duan Lingtian's tone remained calm as he stared at Lei Zhong and asked each word distinctly. This time, Lei Zhong didn't speak, but the cold glint in his eyes undoubtedly showed his naturally assumed thoughts. "Slap? Another?" Resounding slap echoed, making the hearts of the onlookers pound faster, and each of them felt a chill down their spine. "Didn't you hear me asking you a question?" Duan Lingtian, who had slapped Lei Zhong again, making Lei Zhong's eyes almost pop out, spoke again. His voice was no longer calm. It was clearly tinged with a hint of coldness. "Do you dare to kill me?" Finally, Lei Zhong swallowed a mouthful of clotted blood that almost gushed out, and asked in a hoarse and cold voice, "Your name is Lei Zhong. I wonder, who is that Lei Jun, the second strongest among the younger generation of the Soaring Cloud sect, to you?" Duan Lingtian ignored Lei Zhong and asked on his own. He always felt that since Lei Zhong and Lei Jun both had the surname Lei and were both the most outstanding disciples of the younger generation of the Soaring Cloud sect, there should be some connection between them. "He is my younger brother, and also a direct disciple of our Soaring Cloud sect's sect leader." Upon hearing Duan Lingtian mention Lei Jun, Lei Zhong's pale face was filled with pride. "Your younger brother, that's quite a coincidence." Duan Lingtian smiled, a particularly brilliant smile. As he smiled, his voice gradually turned cold, as if coming from an ice cave. "Do you think that if I dared to kill your younger brother, I wouldn't dare to kill you?" Whoosh! As Duan Lingtian uttered these words, the entire place erupted in an uproar. Duan Lingtian killed Lei Zhong's younger brother, Lei Jun, a direct disciple of the Soaring Cloud sect's sect leader. It's over, it's over. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Peng Bao was first stunned, then showed a bitter smile. He knew that from the moment Duan Lingtian spoke these words, the relationship between Duan Lingtian and the Soaring Cloud sect was destined to be one of endless hostility. No wonder I wondered why I hadn't seen Lei Jun. He should have arrived at the central area of this Martial Emperor's hidden treasure earlier than us, but I didn't expect him to be dead already. Now, not only Peng Bao but even Huang Danyu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong also suddenly realized. As for where and when Lei Jun died, it was not difficult for them to guess. Some time ago, Lei Jun and Peng Bao fell out, and Lei Jun left alone. They traveled with Duan Lingtian to the central area of this Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, and during that time they only separated once, which was in the cave with 6 entrances, when they each went to explore different paths. Presumably, Duan Lingtian encountered Lei Jun at that time and killed him. This Duan Lingtian is doomed. Zuo Yue's lips curled into a cold smile, his face filled with schadenfreude. Xu Qing's face was calm, but a hint of surprise still appeared in his eyes, amazed by Duan Lingtian's boldness. It seems Lei Zhong is doomed this time. Xu Qing sighed, inwardly. Since Duan Lingtian had publicly stated that he killed Lei Jun, it undoubtedly showed his determination to kill Lei Zhong. What? You killed my brother? Lei Zhong's pupils constricted. His pale face changed again, and his body, lifted by Duan Lingtian's grip on his neck, trembled violently with anger, his eyes filled with extreme coldness. You're doomed! You're doomed! Lei Zhong roared in a hoarse voice. Whether I'm doomed or not, you won't have the chance to see. Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged. As a cold light flashed in his eyes, the hand gripping Lei Zhong's neck suddenly exerted force. Crack! A crisp sound of bones breaking echoed, reaching the ears of the onlookers, making them feel a chill and a tingling sensation on their scalps. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Lei Zhong, with wide-open eyes, didn't even have time to let out a scream. His head snapped back, and he completely lost his breath. His eyes, which had originally contained anger, became dull. Whoosh! With a raise of his hand, Duan Tian took the spatial ring from Lei Zhong's hand, then let go, allowing Lei Zhong's the body to fall from a height of over 100 meters, inevitably turning into a puddle of flesh. Silence. The scene was terrifyingly quiet. Although, when Duan Tian said that he had killed Lei Jun, everyone present realized that he would certainly kill Lei Zhong as well. After all, after he admitted to killing Lei Jun, even if he didn't kill Lei Zhong, his fate would be the same after leaving the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure. Since the outcome was the same, and he had voluntarily revealed that he killed Lei Jun, it was naturally impossible for him to let Lei Zhong go, so Lei Zhong died. Although it was within their expectations, it still made them tremble with fear, especially the disciples of the three second-rate forces. They were well aware of the status of the Lei Zhong and Lei Jun brothers in the soaring Cloud Sect. These two brothers were not only the leading figures of the younger generation of the Soaring Cloud Sect and the future pillars of the Soaring Cloud Sect, but also direct disciples of the two strongest powerhouses of the Soaring Cloud Sect. The strongest powerhouse of the Soaring Cloud Sect was Lei Zhong's master, and also the only Martial Emperor powerhouse of the Soaring Cloud Sect, the Grand Elder. As for the second strongest powerhouse of the Soaring Cloud Sect, it was the current sect leader of the Soaring Cloud Sect, Lei Jun's master, Duan Tian. Killing the Lei Zhong and Lei Jun brothers was equivalent to giving the two strongest powerhouses of the Soaring Cloud Sect a resounding slap, completely disregarding their dignity. Whoosh! 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 At this moment, some more people arrived at the central area of this Martial Emperor's hidden treasure. They just happened to witness Duan Tian killing Lei Zhong, causing Lei Zhong to be smashed into a pulp. Who is so unlucky as to provoke senior brother Ling Tian? Among this group of people, there were many disciples of the Five Elements sect. They couldn't help but mourn for Lei Zhong. Of course, the reason they thought this was because they didn't know Lei Zhong's identity. Otherwise, they wouldn't have thought all of this was so natural. He's still alive. Among the few surviving Five Elements sect disciples, one of them looked at Duan Tian with a mixture of horror and disbelief in his eyes. It was as if he had seen something incredible. Duan Tian! At the same time, a swift figure appeared just in time in the sky beside the central palace. Zhang Yan had just arrived and witnessed Duan Tian killing someone. That person doesn't seem to be the young powerhouse who came in with us from entrance number 2. Looking at the corpse that had been smashed into a pulp, a sharp glint flashed in Zhang Yan's eyes, revealing a hint of surprise. Since it wasn't someone who came in from entrance number 2, then it could only be someone who came in from entrance number 1. Along the way, he had a certain understanding of the group of young powerhouses who entered the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, knowing that besides entrance number 2, only entrance number 1 had people entering, and the people who came in from entrance number 1 were a group of young disciples from the 3 second-rate forces of the northern desert land. Duan Tian killing a disciple of a second-rate force in front of so many people? Zhang Yan's lips couldn't help but twitch slightly. Although he had also killed a few disciples of second-rate forces along the way, those were all killed without a second living person knowing. To make him kill a disciple of a second-rate force in front of everyone, he admitted that he didn't have that much courage. Compared to a third-rate force like his own emotion-severing sect, a second-rate force, though only a single word different, had a world of difference in strength and foundation. In Wanbei, what's going on? Finally, Zhang Yan couldn't help but look at the young monk standing not far away, and inquired through vital energy transmission. At this moment, the young monk was staring blankly at the purple-clad youth standing in the distance, unable to recover for a long time. Zhang Yan's vital energy transmission startled him, making him fully recover. He couldn't help but respond with a bitter smile through vital energy transmission. What else could it be? Duan Tian killed Lei Zhong of the Soaring Cloud Sect. When Duan Tian didn't use a spirit weapon and displayed the power of 1,200 ancient horned dragons, he knew that he was no match for Duan Tian. Cloud Sect, Xuanbei reminded. In the northern desert, the Cloud Sect, Impermanence Sect, and Northern Underworld sect, these three second-rate forces, undoubtedly stood at the pinnacle. As a member of the many third-rate forces in the Northern Desert, although they didn't have much interaction with the second-rate forces, people from the third-rate forces still heard about some matters concerning the second-rate forces. Lei Zhong, Cloud Sect? With Xuanbei's reminder, Zhang Yan's thoughts gradually became clearer. Soon, his face was filled with shock, his pupils couldn't help but contract, and he muttered, "Could this Lei Zhong be the number one strongest young generation expert of that Cloud Sect?" Immediately after, Zhang Yan looked at Duanling Tian, feeling a tingling sensation on his scalp. This Duanling Tian, how much has his strength improved? He can even kill Lei Zhong of the Cloud Sect. Lei Zhong, the number one person, among the younger generation of the Cloud Sect, he had heard of him long ago. According to rumors, Lei Zhong's cultivation had already entered the 4th level of the Void transformation stage, and he had comprehended the 4th level high-grade fire concept. Looking at the entire Northern Desert, he was a top-tier young expert. He was far beyond what he could compare to now, and now such a powerful young expert had been killed by Duanling Tian. For a moment, Zhang Yan couldn't help but be shocked by Duanling Tian's current strength. While shocked, he also couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat for Duanling Tian. Duanling Tian is still so bold, daring to kill Lei Zhong. Lei Zhong, it is said, is not only the number one person among the younger generation of the Cloud Sect, but also the personal disciple of that Martial Emperor expert of the Cloud Sect. Killing the personal disciple of a Martial Emperor expert in front of so many people. Zhang Yan could almost foresee Duanling Tian's fate in the future. Duanling Tian killed Lei Zhong, the number one person among the younger generation of the Cloud Sect. Duanling Tian has already declared his departure from our 5-element sect. Nanggong Chen, Nanggong Yi, as well as Tan Huan and Tian Zhen, who arrived at the central area of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure one after another, were all shocked by the news they heard from other 5-element sect disciples. Even Nanggong Chen, although his face remained stern, showed genuine apprehension in his eyes. Tian Wu, the power within your body seems extremely unstable. When you tried to mobilize and unleash the fire profundity earlier, I could clearly feel that it was completely beyond your control. Duanling Tian, who was the focus of everyone's attention, didn't care about the gazes of others. He returned to Feng Tianwu's side and said with a serious expression, using elemental energy to transmit his voice. Furthermore, once you unleash the fire profundity, it is very likely to prematurely trigger the power of your fire spirit body, causing it to erupt early. At that time, you might be in mortal danger. As he spoke, a hint of worry was mixed in Duanling Tian's brows. Brother Duan, you don't need to worry. If it's not necessary, I just won't unleash the fire profundity. Being cared for by Duanling Tian, Feng Tianwu's heart was filled with warmth, her pretty face slightly flushed, and she said softly and obediently, Hearing. Feng Tianwu's words, Duanling Tian felt relieved. As long as Feng Tianwu didn't forcibly mobilize and unleash the fire concept, the power of her fire spirit body within her would not erupt. At the same time, Duanling Tian looked around and suddenly found many familiar faces at the scene, such as Zhang Yan, Nanggong Chen, Nanggong Yi, Tan Huan and Tian Zhen, as well as other 5-element sect disciples, Cloud Sky Temple disciples, Saber Sword sect disciples, and Heartbreak sect disciples. It's a pity that Shen Wei couldn't make it here alive. Thinking of Shen Wei, Duanling Tian couldn't help but sigh. The show of power just now seems to have had some effect. Duanling Tian glanced at the group of young experts around him and found that most of them showed a hint of genuine fear in their eyes when they looked at him. Even Shu Qing, the number one person among the younger generation of the Northern Underworld sect, and Zuo Yue, the number one person among the younger generation of the Impermanent sect, now showed a hint of apprehension in their brows when they looked at him. Xuanbei, you just said you were interested in the profundity fragment in my hand. You want to snatch it from me? As if remembering something, Duanling Tian suddenly looked at Xuanbei with a half-smile. As soon as Duanling Tian said this, everyone present focused their attention on Xuanbei. This monk from Cloud Sky Temple suddenly became the focus of everyone's attention. Ha ha! Baldy, didn't you want to snatch the profundity fragment from Duanling Tian just now? You were interrupted earlier and didn't succeed. Now that no one is interrupting you, why don't you hurry up and snatch it? Thinking of the scene. Just now, Huang Danyu couldn't help but look at Xuanbei, laughing heartily with a teasing expression. What? Senior brother Xuanbei wanted to snatch the profundity fragment from Duanling Tian just now. The surviving Cloud Sky Temple disciples looked at each other, seeing shock and disbelief in each other's eyes. Now, they had only one thought in their minds. Has senior brother Xuanbei's head been kicked by a donkey? When Duanling Tian looked, over Xuanbei realized something was wrong. After Duanling Tian repeated what he had said earlier, the corner of his mouth twitched uncontrollably. What a joke. He had said that earlier because he thought he could overpower Duanling Tian with his strength. But after witnessing the strength Duanling Tian displayed, he completely abandoned the idea of fighting Duanling Tian. He didn't want to be abused. Duanling Tian, our agreement is hereby annulled. I admit that I am far from your match. Taking a deep breath, Xuanbei no longer cared about his reputation, acting like a dead pig, not afraid of boiling water. Duanling Tian gave Xuanbei a deep look, not intending to argue with him. He didn't have a good impression of this young monk from Cloud Sky Temple, but he didn't have a bad one either. As for what the other party had said earlier, he didn't take it to heart. Even if Xuanbei were in his position and possessed the profundity fragment, he in Xuanbei's position would have said the same thing. After all, any martial artist would be interested in profundity fragments. Duanling Tian, after leaving the martial Emperor's secret treasure this time, run as far as you can. Since you publicly announced your departure from the Five Elements sect in front of so many people, the Cloud sect, out of concern for their reputation, probably won't attack the Five Elements sect, but you are different. A voice, filled with concern, transmitted through elemental energy, reached Duanling Tian's ears. That Cloud sect, in order to avenge Lei Zhong and Lei Jun, the two brothers, will definitely kill you at all costs. Fortunately, the entrance you came through was not the same as ours. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to escape. The person transmitting the elemental energy was Peng Bao, a disciple of the Impermanence sect. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Duanling Tian looked at Peng Bao, whose gaze was on him, and who looked at him with concern, feeling a warmth in his heart, and responded with a smile. As he said, he knew what he was doing. Since he dared to kill Lei Zhong, it meant he had prepared a way out for himself. Leaving the Five Elements sect was just the first step. Of course, the most important reason for leaving the Five Elements sect was that he didn't want to implicate the Five Elements sect because of his own affairs. He could leave alone. But the Five Elements sect could not. If the Five Elements sect were to be annihilated by the Cloud sect because of him, he would not be able to rest easy. This palace, is it the palace left behind by that Martial Emperor expert? His final resting place? Suddenly, someone said, not knowing who. Immediately, everyone's attention, including Duanling Tian's, shifted from Xuanbei and turned to the giant palace, their eyes shining brightly. They had come all this way for this palace left behind by the Martial Emperor expert. In this palace, other treasures aside, just the 3 profundity fragments within the Martial Emperor expert's remains were enough to drive anyone crazy. One of them was an Emperor-grade profundity fragment. The 4 sides of this palace are actually covered with such dense, killing formations. How can anyone get in? Duanling Tian's spiritual power extended out, and as soon as it enveloped the palace, he discovered the terrifying killing formations covering it. The power of these killing formations was no less than the killing formations at entrance number 2, profundity fragment. Just as Duanling Tian felt a sense of dread, a saber sword sect disciple shouted excitedly, diving down towards the palace, intending to be the first to enter. As the saying goes, the early bird catches the worm. Perhaps, in his opinion, the first person to enter the palace would also have a greater chance of finding the Martial Emperor expert's remains and obtaining the profundity fragments within the Martial Emperor expert's body. Whoosh. The saber sword sect disciple was extremely fast, reaching the palace in an instant, heading straight for the palace gate. Ha ha. The saber sword sect disciple stood outside the palace, laughing excitedly, and his entire body transformed into a bolt of lightning, shooting towards the gate. Seeing the saber sword sect disciple make a move, the young experts of various forces also became restless for a moment. However, what happened next made them all look terrified and completely quiet down. The saber sword sect disciple flew out, and before he even got close to the palace gate, he seemed to be blocked by an invisible force, preventing him from approaching. Boom! Immediately after, under everyone's watchful eyes, the saber sword sect disciple's body strangely exploded, turning into a sky full of blood rain, scattering in front of the palace gate, dazzling and striking. Hiss, 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 hiss. Seeing this scene, only gasps of cold air remained at the scene. It's an inscription array. Soon, someone reacted, and their gaze towards the giant palace in front of them completely changed again. Everyone's gaze at the palace, it now was no longer like looking at a pile of rare treasures, but more like looking at a ferocious and terrifying giant beast, filled with genuine fear. This palace is surrounded by killing formations. How do we get in? Many young experts frowned, looking troubled. The treasure was right in front of them, but now, whether they could even get in alive was a question. Since that Martial Emperor expert left this place and allowed us to enter to retrieve the 3 profundity fragments from his remains, it shouldn't be possible for him to shut us out. Someone said, analyzing the situation, though it was unclear who. Indeed, since that Martial Emperor left such a place, and his remains are inside, logically he wouldn't prevent us from entering. Many people agreed. Just as everyone was at a loss due to the killing formation shrouding the palace, Duanling Tian's extended spiritual force detected something. He found that after the saber and sword sect disciple was exploded to death by the killing formation shrouding the palace, the killing formation seemed to have completed its mission, gradually receding and then disappearing. Could it be that the killing formation set up by that Martial Emperor outside the palace only needs someone to sacrifice their life to break it? Duanling Tian raised an eyebrow, secretly guessing in his heart. Breaking a formation with a blood sacrifice was not unfamiliar to him, having integrated the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, as long as the inscription master who set up the killing formation intended it. The killing formation could be set up to be broken by a blood sacrifice. As long as someone died under the killing formation would automatically break. Fortunate young people, welcome. Just as Duanling Tian's thoughts turned, a familiar yet unfamiliar voice entered everyone's ears, causing their expressions to tighten slightly. After the killing formation was broken, a sound-gathering formation was activated. Duanling Tian's spiritual force detected the anomaly immediately. It's the voice of the Martial Emperor. Immediately, the group of young powerhouses present recognized whose voice it was. They had heard this voice several times since entering the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Soon, the Martial Emperor's message, left in the sound-gathering formation, continued. The blood sacrifice is complete. The killing formation is broken. Fortunate young people, you may enter. The Martial Emperor's voice was devoid of emotion, incredibly cold. Blood sacrifice complete? Upon hearing the Martial Emperor's words, the group of young powerhouses present were first stunned, then reacted, their expressions changing. So, it was that saber and sword sect disciple who broke the killing formation for us with his life. Listening to that Martial Emperor's message, it's clear that one person must die to break the killing formation with a blood sacrifice. Luckily, I wasn't in a hurry to go in just now, otherwise the one to sacrifice might have been me. Too cruel. It requires one person's life to open the killing formation outside this palace. Perhaps the palace inside is even more fraught with danger. The young powerhouses present discussed animatedly, their brows filled with apprehension, wary of the palace left by the Martial Emperor and the potential dangers within. Even Zuo Yue and Xu Qing, after hearing the Martial Emperor's message, did not act rashly for a moment. Let's go. Duanling Tian smiled slightly at Feng Tianwu. then called out to Huang Danyu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong, and after nodding to Peng Bao, he was the first to swoop down. Feng Tianwu followed closely, trusting Duanling Tian unconditionally, as Sefui say. Long as Duanling Tian was by her side, even if it were a mountain of swords and a sea of fire, she would not fear. In her opinion, even death, as long as she could die by the side of her beloved, she would have no regrets in this life. Go. This time, Huang Danyu and the other two did not hesitate. As Duanling Tian and Feng Tianwu moved, they followed closely. Duanling Tian descended, using his spiritual force to clear the way, directly heading for the palace gate, and in a moment, he arrived before the magnificent gate. Duanling Tian stood before the gate, extended both hands, pressed them against the gate, and exerted force suddenly. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Immediately the gate slowly opened, with a grand momentum. Go! After opening the gate, Duanling Tian called out to the four people beside him and was the first to fly in. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Feng Tianwu and the other four followed Duanling Tian, their figures instantly disappearing behind the still not fully open gate, completely vanishing from the sight of those outside. They're fine. Immediately, many people's eyes lit up. Let's go in too. Nangong, Yai raised an eyebrow, and together with Nangong Chen, they flew out and entered the palace through the open gate. Go! Zhang Yan and Xuanbei, leading the surviving disciples of the Heartbreak Sect and Cloud Sky Temple, followed one by one. Following closely, Peng Bao, Zuo Yue, and Shu Qing also led the disciples of the Impermanent Sect and Northern Underworld Sect in whoosh. Duanling Tian was the first to enter the palace. As soon as he entered, his spiritual force detected the dense fluctuations of inscription formations emanating from within. Among them, one inscription formation almost covered the ground and space areas of the necessary path. Illusion formation! Duanling Tian stopped, muttering to himself, his expression becoming solemn, because the inscription formation he had just discovered was this illusion formation. To enter the palace, one must pass through it. As soon as one enters the illusion formation, they will fall into an illusion, and where they will appear after passing through the illusion is beyond their control. Illusion formation? Feng Tianwu and the other four, who were beside Duanling Tian, heard his low murmur and couldn't help but be startled. They had no doubt about Duanling Tian's words. Yes, it's an illusion formation. Duanling Tian nodded, then said with a solemn expression, This illusion formation has no destructive power. It's similar to the illusion formation we experienced before, only to separate us and let us search for treasures in this palace on our own. Illusion formation is the abbreviation for illusionary realm formation. To enter the palace, one must pass through it. So the four of us will likely have to part ways here again, Duanling Tian said. What is that, Martial Emperor? Up to, always separating us. I still want to be with you and get more benefits, Huang Danyu looked at Duanling Tian, saying with some displeasure. How would I know what he's up to? Duanling Tian was a bit speechless, seeing Huang Danyu complaining to him, and he gave him an exasperated glare. Then, everyone, be careful, Zhang Shouyong said. Su Li nodded. Tianwu. Duanling Tian looked at Feng Tianwu. Beside him, his voice condensed with solemn elemental energy. If not necessary, absolutely do not mobilize or use the profound truth of fire. Otherwise, the power of your fire spirit body will inevitably act up, even harming your life. Feng Tianwu heard the concern in Duanling Tian's words, and a rare, captivating smile appeared on her stunning face, causing Duanling Tian to lose himself for a moment. Seeing Duanling Tian staring at her in a daze, Feng Tianwu's pretty face flushed, as if it could bleed, infinitely shy. Duanling Tian then awkwardly withdrew his gaze, self-consciously rubbed his nose, and then changed the subject. You guys go in first! Go, let's find that Martial Emperor's remains. If I can find them, I'll be rich. Huang Danyu excitedly shouted and flew out. Almost at the same time, Huang Danyu flew out. His figure was enveloped by swirling black mist that appeared out of nowhere, disappearing from the sight of Duanling Tian and the others. The illusion formation was officially activated by him, Duanling Tian. Then I'll go in first. Su Li greeted Duanling Tian, then followed into the illusion formation. Following closely, Zhang Shouyong went in. Brother Duan, you must also be careful. Feng Tianwu said to Duanling Tian, and only after receiving Duanling Tian's affirmation did she enter the illusion formation. Whoosh! Whoosh! At this moment, 2 more figures appeared beside Duanling Tian, causing him to involuntarily look sideways. With just one glance, Duanling Tian recognized the 2, Nangong Chen, Nangong Yi Duan. Ling Tian nodded to the 2, considering it a greeting, and then, without waiting for their response, flew into the black mist, disappearing from the sight of the Nangong brothers. Another illusion formation. Looking at the familiar black mist before them, Nangong Yi frowned. So you and I will be separated again this time? Previously, when they first entered, due to the illusion formation around the platform at the bottom of the stone, steps on one side of the high platform, he and Nangong Chen were separated, and it took them half a month to meet again in the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. This was still relying on their telepathy. As twin brothers, Nangong Yi and Nangong Chen could almost sense each other's approximate location, as long as the distance between them wasn't too exaggerated. Telepathy, Nangong Chen coolly reminded him. Right, telepathy. How could... I forget such an important thing. In this palm-sized palace, with our telepathy, we can completely sense each other's location immediately. Reminded by Nangong Chen, Nangong Yi's eyes lit up. Fool. Nangong Chen coolly responded, and then, before Nangong Yi could react, he flew out and entered the black mist-shrouded illusion formation, disappearing from sight. You're the fool! Nangong Yi reacted, cursed resentfully, and followed, in with a displeased expression. A moment later, Zhang Yon and Xuan Bei also arrived. Another illusion formation. Although surprised by the illusion formation before them, the 2 did not hesitate much and directly flew in, disappearing into the illusion formation. Following closely, the disciples of the 5-element sect, Saber and Sword sect, Cloud Sky Temple, and Heartbreak sect entered one by one. Of the disciples from the 6 major forces who entered through entrance number 2, only 4 major forces still had surviving disciples. As for the disciples of the other 2 major forces, they were all annihilated after. The group from entrance number 2 disappeared into the illusion formation. The group from entrance number 1 arrived late, appearing one by one inside the palace. The leaders were Shu Qing and Zuo Yue. Go. And Zhu Qing called out to the 3 surviving disciples of their northern underworld sect and flew into the illusion formation. Duanling Tian, I hope you truly held back something after using your spirit weapon earlier. Otherwise, once I discover that the 1,600 ancient horned dragon powers you unleashed after using your spirit weapon were your full strength, I will kill you! After Shu Qing and the others went in, a cold light flashed in Zuo Yue's eyes. To this day, Zuo Yue still could not forget the profound truth fragment in Duanling Tian's hand. If Duanling Tian, with the aid of a spirit weapon, exerted his full strength, his power would only be comparable to that of 1,600 ancient horned dragons. He was absolutely confident he could kill Duanling Tian. With his comprehension of the 4th-level void transformation concept and his 4th-level void transformation realm cultivation, once he used a spirit weapon, his power would be comparable to over 1,620 ancient horned dragons. In his opinion, if his power, which was stronger by over 20 ancient horned dragons compared to Duanling Tian's, couldn't kill Duanling Tian, then he wouldn't deserve to be called the #1 young talent of the Wuchang sect. When that Duanling Tian fought Lei Zhong, he seemed to use several concepts, and their levels were not low. Zuo Yue's eyes flickered as he recalled the scene of Duanling Tian fighting Lei Zhong, thinking to himself, perhaps precisely because, in the more than 200 ancient horned dragon power he displayed without a spirit weapon, the concept accounted for a larger proportion, and origin energy accounted for a smaller proportion. Therefore, when a spirit weapon is used, the power amplified by the spirit weapon is not strong. As Zuo Yue thought of this, he became even more certain. Now only the final confirmation remains. Once it's confirmed that Duanling Tian's full strength is only 1,600 ancient horned dragons, I won't even need to wait for the people from Chuyun's sect to kill him. I can kill him myself. At this thought, Zuo Yue's eyes revealed a hint of greed, a greed for the profound fragment in Duanling Tian's hands. Naturally, Duanling Tian was unaware of Zuo Yue's thoughts. Otherwise, he would surely be shocked by Zuo Yue's judgment. Just as Zuo Yue had thought, Duanling Tian's power indeed had a larger proportion of concept and a smaller proportion of origin energy. The power of 1,600 ancient horned dragons was also the limit of the strength Duanling Tian could currently exert. First a grassland, now a desert. Within the illusion array, Duanling Tian found himself in a vast, boundless desert. As far as the eye could see, there was only yellow sand, not a trace of green or blue. Young man, head east. Just as Duanling Tian was looking around, unsure of which way to go, a familiar yet strange voice reached his ears. It was the message, left by the Martial Emperor who had left behind the Martial Emperor's hidden treasure, east. With the hint, Duanling Tian knew his destination for this journey. He ascended into the air and flew straight towards the east at a rapid speed. Duanling Tian initially thought this time would be like the last, a straight path to the end, but he quickly realized he had overthought it. Young man, north. Young man, west. Young man, southwest. The Martial Emperor's message in the sound-gathering array combined with the illusion array. Duanling Tian was in, clearly entered Duanling Tian's ears, making him constantly rush around. Finally, Duanling Tian reached the end. What kind of place is that Martial Emperor guiding me to, that it requires so many changes in direction? With curiosity, Duanling Tian stepped out of the illusion array. After exiting the illusion array, what appeared before Duanling Tian was a long, spacious corridor. On both sides of the corridor, there was a neat row of stone chambers. At the abbey entrance of each stone chamber stood a statue, either human-shaped or beast-shaped, looking lifelike, almost indistinguishable from the real thing. These stone chambers. Out of curiosity, Duanling Tian approached the first stone chamber and peered in, wanting to see what was inside. With just one glance, he saw a stone platform in the not-so-spacious stone chamber, and on the platform was a sword that looked extraordinary. Second-grade spirit sword. Having fused with the memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor, Duanling Tian inherited the reincarnation Martial Emperor's discerning eye as an imperial-grade artificer. For spirit weapons whose grade ordinary people needed to test, he could discern their grade with just a glance. "There's a second-grade spirit sword here?" Duanling Tian was momentarily stunned, then stepped in, entering the stone chamber. "Although this sword is only a second-grade spirit weapon, the materials used are quite good. I can keep it." As his heart stirred, Duanling Tian prepared to enter the stone chamber to retrieve the second-grade spirit sword. And just as he stepped into the stone chamber, his expression suddenly changed. Whoosh! A piercing whoosh of wind almost instantly reached his ears, accompanied by a heavy, solid fist. To be precise, it was a stone fist. It was the human-shaped statue standing at the entrance of the stone chamber that had moved. The moment Duanling Tian entered the stone chamber, it struck a punch at Duanling Tian with lightning speed. Around the human-shaped statue's fist, blue ripples intertwined, containing vast, surging power, as if capable of shattering everything. Whoosh! Unfortunately, as Duanling Tian raised his hand like lightning, the human-shaped statue's stone fist was easily and effortlessly caught by him. From beginning to end, Duanling Tian's face was calm, feeling no pressure whatsoever. Bang! Just then, the human-shaped statue moved again. It took a step, landing on the ground with a loud thud. Immediately after, its other leg shot out like lightning, attacking Duanling Tian's lower body. The blue ripples surged, as if transforming into rolling waves and surging tides, impacting Duanling Tian. At the same time, above its head in the void, the power of heaven and earth surged, finally converging into the phantom of 180 ancient, horned dragons. In other words, the human-shaped statue's attack was comparable to the power of 300 ancient horned dragons. A 7th level void. Prying realm, first-level advanced water concept? Although the human-shaped statue was fast, in Duan Lingtian's eyes, it was as slow as a tortoise, not worth mentioning. Duan Lingtian casually kicked out a leg, containing only origin energy, and easily broke the leg of the human-shaped statue that was attacking him. Boom! The broken leg of the human-shaped statue flew out, crashed to the ground, and turned into a pile of rubble and stone chips. Bang! At the same time, Duan Lingtian flicked his hand, throwing a punch back. Vast power swept towards the human-shaped statue, shattering it and turning it into a sky full of stone chips. At the same time, 10 origin stones and a blue fragment appeared before Duan Lingtian. The blue fragment was naturally a water concept fragment. The inscription array inside the statue is hidden quite deeply. Earlier, I didn't deliberately use my spiritual power to investigate, so I didn't discover it at all. Duan Lingtian murmured to himself. 10 mid-grade origin stones, 1 first-level water concept fragment. The harvest is pretty good. Having obtained such a harvest with a casual punch and kick, Duan Lingtian was very satisfied. After taking the second-grade spirit sword from the stone chamber, Duan Lingtian walked to the next stone chamber. The next stone chamber contained a pill bottle. I wonder what kind of pill it is. Out of curiosity, Duan Lingtian ignored the beast-shaped statue at the entrance of this stone chamber and quickly swept into the stone chamber, grabbing the pill bottle first. Opening it, he found 3 pills inside. Second-grade rebirth pill. Purity less than 70%. Trash. Frowning, Duan Lingtian casually threw the pill bottle to the ground, disdainful of the 3 second-grade rebirth pills stored inside. If anyone saw this scene, they would surely curse Duan Lingtian for being a spendthrift. Those were second-grade rebirth pills, high-grade healing pills. Ordinary people might not even be able to get them if they wanted to. However, in Duan Lingtian's eyes, those second-grade rebirth pills with less than 70% purity were trash, utterly and completely insignificant trash. Having fused with the reincarnation Martial Emperor's lifetime of alchemy techniques and experience, he had already condensed first-grade pillfire and become a noble, first-grade alchemist. As long as he had enough medicinal ingredients, let alone high-purity second-grade rebirth pills, even high-purity first-grade rebirth pills were easy for him to produce, without any pressure. However, while Duan Lingtian considered those 3 second-grade rebirth pills to be trash, the beast-shaped statue guarding the entrance of the stone chamber did not think so. Almost at the same time, Duan Lingtian threw away the pill bottle. The beast-shaped statue at the entrance of the stone chamber moved. Flames surged around its body, and it lunged towards Duan Lingtian. This beast-shaped statue was as strong as the previous human-shaped statue, and in front of Duan Lingtian, it was no match. Duan Lingtian didn't even need to use concept. He simply swept out with pure, third-level void transformation realm origin energy, completely crushing its power and blowing it apart. Boom! 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 The beast-shaped statue, blown apart by Duan Lingtian, turned into a pile of flying stone fragments, forming a small hill. Before that, Duan Lingtian had acted with lightning speed, taking the 10 mid-grade origin stones, in 1 first-level fire concept fragment that burst out from the beast-shaped statue's body. Is there anything exciting to be found? Duan Lingtian swept through the long corridor, smashing the statues at the entrances of the stone chambers along the way, and turning all the stone chambers upside down. However, he only collected some second-grade spirit weapons and first-grade spirit weapons. As for the pills, he casually threw them all away. Even precious healing pills like first-grade rebirth pills were no exception. He discarded them like trash. According to Duan Lingtian, second-grade spirit weapons and first-grade spirit weapons, even if they were a bit lacking, could still be melted down and reforged. Pills, however, could not be melted down and reforged. Low purity. Pills, even first-grade pills, he found equally unsightly and didn't even bother to put them into his spatial ring. Is this the end? Unbeknownst to him, Duan Lingtian found himself at the end of the long corridor. As he swept through, the statues at the entrances of the stone chambers also became stronger. However, in the face of his powerful strength, even the stronger statues could not withstand a single blow from him and were easily smashed one by one. "There's still one more stone chamber there." Reaching the end of the long corridor, Duan Lingtian saw a stone chamber ahead, a big stone chamber. Without any hesitation, Duan Lingtian walked over. Just then, Duan Lingtian sensed a slight fluctuation of an inscription array. He knew that he must have triggered a certain inscription array. "Young man, congratulations on arriving at the 4-into-1 stone chamber. 1 hour later, if only you remain in the light circle, you can enter the 4-into-1 stone chamber and obtain your deserved treasure." 4-into-1 stone chamber. Hearing the name of this stone chamber, Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched. "Halo? What halo?" Duan Lingtian frowned, looking around, but couldn't find the halo mentioned in the Martial Emperor's message. However, at that very moment, he saw a faint light suddenly shoot out from the stone chamber ahead, enveloping him and forming a halo. Instantly, he was completely enveloped by the halo. "An hour later, if only I remain in the halo, I can enter that 4-into-1 stone chamber and obtain the treasures within." With the halo now present, Duan Lingtian's attention shifted elsewhere. Soon, Duan Lingtian discovered. Besides the long corridor he had walked through, there were 3 other long corridors leading to the 4-into-1 stone chamber, from different directions. Could there be 3 other people? Instantly, Duan Lingtian vaguely guessed the origin of the 4-into-1 stone chamber's name. 4-into-1. Out of 4, 3 are eliminated, and 1 enters. It seems that only after an hour, when only 1 person remains in the halo, will that 4-into-1 stone chamber officially open. This was not difficult for Duan Lingtian to guess. The other 3? I wonder who they will be. Duan Lingtian looked at the other 3 long corridors, his eyes flashing. They haven't arrived yet, so their strength is clearly not great. It can't be Shuqing, Zuo Yue, and Peng Bao. Luckily I ran fast, otherwise I would have been killed by those broken stone men. Then my lifelong reputation would have been completely ruined. Suddenly, a loud voice came from one of the long corridors, entering Duan Lingtian's ears and making his expression incredibly strange. What a coincidence. Duan Lingtian's lips curled into a playful smile, looking at the corridor from which the voice came, a smirk playing on his face. At the same time, a sturdy, tall figure appeared before his eyes. Duan Lingtian? The sturdy and tall young man, after grumbling and walking out of the long corridor, he immediately saw the purple-clad young man standing not far away and couldn't help but show surprise. "Dan Yu, we are truly fated." Seeing the sturdy young man, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but smile. The person who came was none other than Huang Dan Yu. "Haha, Duan Lingtian, it seems my luck is good. Even heaven is helping me by letting me meet you here. Come on, help me get rid of those broken stone men. I want those spirit artifacts and those bottles of pills," Huang Dan Yu said, his eyes shining. Duan Lingtian naturally knew what kind of stone men Huang Dan Yu was talking about. They were simply the humanoid statues he had encountered and shattered on his way from the long corridor behind. Those statues were no match for him. However, some of those statues were formidable opponents for Huang Dan Yu. Let's go. Considering that there was still nearly an hour until the 4-into-1 stone chamber opened, Duan Lingtian followed Huang Dan Yu into the long corridor from which Huang Dan Yu had come. Sweeping through once more, Duan Lingtian destroyed the humanoid and beast-shaped statues that Huang Dan Yu couldn't handle. One by one, as for Huang Dan Yu, he simply reaped the benefits, collecting the spirit artifacts and pills from each stone chamber, a wide smile spreading across his face. "Dan Yu, there's something I need to tell you." Seeing Huang Dan Yu so happy, Duan Lingtian decided to pour some cold water on him to sober him up. Huang Dan Yu looked at Duan Lingtian in confusion, but the smile on his face didn't fade. "It's about that special stone chamber at the end of the long corridor. Only 1 person can enter. Including you and me, there are a total of 4 people competing." Duan Lingtian recounted everything he knew. "Damn it! What kind of cursed luck do I have to be competing with a guy like you? I wonder who the other 2 unlucky ones are, just as unlucky as me." After listening to Duan Lingtian, Huang Dan Yu couldn't help but curse, and by the end, his face was full of resentment. "Dan Yu, You change your tune pretty quickly. Who was it just now who said his luck was good, and even heaven was helping him by letting him meet me here? Duanling Tian looked at Huang Danyu with a half-smile, remembering clearly what Huang Danyu had said when he first saw him. That's because I didn't know there was a special stone chamber at the time. I'm so unlucky to be grouped with a freak like you, Huang Danyu said with a bitter smile. Soon he recovered. Fortunately, there are 2 other unlucky guys to accompany me. Let's go. Let's see who the other 2 unlucky guys are. When Duanling Tian and Huang Danyu returned to the 4-into-1 stone chamber area, they found 2 young men already standing there, the atmosphere tense. The 2 young men stood facing each other, a palpable tension radiating between them. Only when Duanling Tian appeared did their gazes shift to him. With just one glance, their expressions completely changed. Duanling Tian! One of them swallowed hard, his face turning pale. The other was no better. As he looked at Duanling Tian, a hint of terror appeared in his eyes, as if he had encountered some monstrous beast. How boring. I thought they were from a second-rate force, but it turns out to be you 2. Huang Danyu, standing beside Duanling Tian, couldn't help but feel a little disappointed after seeing the 2. Duanling Tian shook his head and smiled. He naturally knew why Huang Danyu said that. He simply wanted to see the disciples of second-rate forces suffer a setback in front of him. But who knew that those grouped with them were not disciples of second-rate forces? Duanling Tian had some impression of the 2 men before him. One of them was a disciple of the Duanqing sect, and the other was a lay disciple of the Yunkong Temple. What? Are the 2 of you going to contend with me? Duanling Tian slowly walked into the halo surrounding the special stone chamber, his eyes slightly narrowed, looking at the 2 men with a half-smile. No. Nothing of the sort. I'm leaving now. The 2 frantically waved their hands, then fled from the halo surrounding the special stone chamber, their figures disappearing into the long corridors from which they had each come. Are you kidding me? The other party was someone who could defeat the #1 young genius of the second-rate force, Chuyun sect. How would they dare to compete with him? Instantly, outside the 4-into-1 stone chamber, only Duanling Tian and Huang Danyu remained. Huang Danyu wisely stepped out of the halo. Duanling Tian, you're going to get rich this time. The treasures inside this special 4-into-1 stone chamber must be extraordinary. Huang Danyu stood outside the halo, looking at Duanling Tian with an envious expression. Duanling Tian smiled, saying nothing more, but his gleaming eyes undoubtedly showed his anticipation for the treasures inside the stone chamber. Time flowed silently. 1 hour passed quickly. Whoosh! Whoosh, 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 whoosh. As the halo around the stone chamber flashed, a light shield rose around the halo, enveloping Duanling Tian and the 4-into-1 stone chamber as if forming a separate space. Da Niu, don't touch. That light shield. That's a killing formation. Almost at the instant the light shield rose, Duanling Tian's spiritual force detected its true nature, and he immediately warned Huang Danyu. Huang Danyu nodded solemnly, then said, The stone chamber has opened. Hurry in! Hearing Huang Danyu's reminder, Duanling Tian then noticed that a stone door had appeared on one side of the previously closed 4-into-1 stone chamber, which was now sliding open. After greeting Huang Danyu, Duanling Tian flew in and entered the stone chamber. Almost as soon as Duanling Tian entered, the stone door on the side of the chamber closed again, trapping him inside. Unlucky. Truly unlucky. Huang Danyu shook his head, turned around, and left to find his own opportunity. Duanling Tian passed through the open stone door and entered the spacious stone chamber. The stone chamber that met his eyes was not much different from the ones he had entered before. If there was any difference, it was that there were no spirit artifacts here, nor any pill bottles containing pills. Rumble. Suddenly, a faint sound from behind him made Duanling Tian's expression change. The moment he reacted, Duanling Tian found that the stone door behind him had already closed, trapping him inside this airtight stone chamber, just as Duanling Tian was thinking of breaking out of the chamber. Rumble! 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 Loud noises came from above, making Duan Lingtian instinctively look up. With just one glance, Duan Lingtian saw the ceiling of the stone chamber move and open on its own, revealing an exit from the chamber for him. Young man, congratulations. You are one step closer to my remains. Just then, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force detected again. When the ceiling moved, it activated the sound-gathering array within the stone chamber, causing the Martial Emperor's voice to once again enter his ears. One step closer? Initially, Duan Lingtian was a bit confused by the Martial Emperor's message. Soon, thinking of the 4-into-1 experience just now, he seemed to understand something. It seems that while the 4-into-1 advancement was happening, on my side, the same 4-into-1 process was happening in other places. Only the person who makes it to the very end will be able to see the Martial Emperor's remains and obtain the 3 profound fragments from within his remains. All of this was not difficult for Duan Lingtian to guess. The treasures in this stone chamber. Now, knowing that he wasn't trapped inside the stone chamber, Duan Lingtian breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the treasure on the stone platform not far away. It was a plant growing in a flower pot, entirely verdant, shimmering with a faint green light. To be precise, it was a grass. This is. Seeing the green glow emanating from this blade of grass, Duan Lingtian realized its extraordinary nature, but he couldn't identify it, so he could only search through his memories of the reincarnation Martial Emperor. Immortal spirit grass. Soon, Duan Lingtian got the answer, an answer that shocked and even thrilled him.